everybody, Ryan Medore here, and welcome to another bass lesson. Today we're going to talk about applying triads. So, we kind of learn a lot of theory stuff like, oh, there's a major scale, there's a major triad, but we might not necessarily learn how to translate it into music. So that is really what this lesson is all about. It's about learning something like a triad, but then figuring out, oh, I can actually create a cool bass line with this. So if you want to get tab or notation for this groove, please check out my Patreon page. I can't tell you how much it helps having your support there, and you'll be able to find all kinds of goodies to accompany this and plenty of other lessons here on my channel. But in the meantime, let's talk about building a groove. But before that, we're going to build a triad. So the first thing to know about triads are that it's the basic building block of a chord. A chord is when we play multiple notes at a time. So if you hear a guitar player play an A major chord or a keyboard player play an A major chord, what we do as bass players is we will arpeggiate the chord or play all of the notes of the chord but individually. So for instance, we may have an A major chord, which we will play as a triad, a 3-note chord, root, third, and fifth. So I'm finding my A here on the 5th fret. I'm using my major third. So if I think about a major scale, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I'm going to find 1 and then 3. And then I need to throw a 5th in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's my 5th scale degree. So all of a sudden, I can go 1, 3, 5. And there we have a major triad. So again, if guitar players are going to be playing an A major chord or keyboard players are playing an A major chord, this is your way of interacting, playing, matching what they are doing. You can also throw the octave on top because really an A is an A. So we can find any of the notes in these chords in different octaves. So if we say, oh cool, I can throw this A on top, I could play a higher A, I could play my open string A, that's totally fair game, as is other thirds, so my C sharp, I could play here, I could play here, the 5th of the chord E, here, could play my low E. As long as it's a note within the chord, it really doesn't matter what octave we play it in, we can kind of move around and play it in different places on the neck, and it will still be considered under the umbrella of the A major chord. So now that we know that, we also want to be mindful of our fingering. So I like to use my 4-fret span fingering as our basic, triad shape number 1. So you'll see that I'll use my middle finger to play the root note, my index for the 3rd, and then my pinky for the 5th. Now, one thing to be mindful of here is that you want to make sure you're able to, get a good tone out of that 5th. A lot of players will kind of like scooch back here, or maybe play in the middle of the fret, but do whatever you can to get the best tone and get right behind the fret there. So it might take a little bit of a stretch between scale degrees 3 and 5, but trust me, it will sound better if you get used to doing this. So before we start making music with things, get comfortable with this triad shape. This is like super crucial bass playing stuff. And then you want to say, oh, well, I could also take this and move it to other chords. So for instance, let's say we're playing in the key of A. The major chords that we might have in our key are going to be A, the 1 chord, D, the 4 chord, and then E, the 5 chord. Because we've just learned a major triad, we can move this triad shape to all of the chords in this 1, 4, 5 chord progression. So there's my A major triad. I can scooch this right next door to my D. And then I can take it 2 frets higher up to the E. And then I can return to my A. So there I just played, our chord progression 1, 4, 5, 1, or A, D, E, back to the A. And we used major triads. So as you start making music with this, get comfortable with this. This is like a thing to stop and practice and really sit down and say, okay, let me get these shapes under my fingers. And then we have to figure out, okay, how can we go beyond just sounding like we're playing an exercise to actually playing music? Now, the trick here is realizing that we don't just have to play like a very boxy kind of rhythm. We don't have to play the notes just like single attacks per every note, we can do a lot of creative stuff with it. We could double up and play a couple of the notes twice. We could give it some groove. We could even just start off with something as simple as this with our root notes. Like automatically, just by playing a second note, you're establishing a feel, and that's super cool. So once you do that, you say, okay, how can I create a fun groove by playing and manipulating the rhythm of this triad? I like to do that. That's cool. That's grooving. I did a couple things there. First, I did 2 attacks on my root note. Then I did an attack, a dead note, and another attack on my third. So, bum. So, played the note, a dead note, and then played it again. And then played my 5th, and then my octave. I can move that to my 4 chord. Up to my 5. Back to my 1. And you can play around with this in a lot of different ways. You can kind of go back and forth. You can add dead notes. You can add a little articulation. Depending upon how you want your chord progression to sound, you can play this pattern 1 time or 2 times, just, depending upon, how the music moves you and what you start to create. So these are just a couple of the things that you can use to take something that's really basic, like just playing some triad patterns, getting them comfortable under your fingers, and then turning it into a groove. So if I were to leave you with some words of wisdom, the thing is really to know your shapes, get comfortable with the fingering pattern, and try to keep that as consistent as possible. And then realize that, you can play around with this. You don't have to play just every note really boxy. You can double up, triple up on some notes. You can add dead notes. You can add some like fun articulation, and then you can kind of play it through a chord progression. So I hope you found this helpful. I hope it becomes something that you can practice and build into your repertoire, and that you can use it to help create and improvise some of your own bass lines. So again, if you want to get tab or notation, anything like that for this lesson, please head over to my Patreon page. You'll be able to find that and plenty of other goodies there. And happy practicing, everybody. Keep it groovy.